everybody. Call our meeting to order. We'll start with a flag salute. Ready to begin? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic, which stands one nation, indivisible. Thank you. Welcome. All 5 board members are present. We have 1 student rep with us. The others are in school activities this afternoon, so I hope that they do well in activities. District leadership is here, so welcome. This is our business meeting for the month of October. We've got a full agenda today, so let's get going, and we'll start off with a district highlight. It is Principal Appreciation Month, Mr. McKay.
Yeah, I think have in front of you, picture them all together, I think that's a good job of sharing information on the website. Very, very fortunate. You see there's some new faces on there. They can keep themselves here.
Great. I'll just tag on to that too on the board. From the board perspective, we are equally grateful for the leadership and the professionalism and the passion that they share for leading our district at the building administrator level. There's 14 of them here on this team, and I know that they've got a lot of people behind them in their buildings, but their leadership is key to that, and they do a fantastic job. So we're equally proud of them and very happy to have them at the helm of their respective areas. So thank you very much, administrators. We'll follow up with that with additional thank yous. At our study session last month, we had an incredible student voice panel at the high school, and it was several brave high school students that were willing to speak their voice and their heart with the board in the room and other district people, and we don't want to rush by how critical and valuable that was. That panel of students were brave, and they really brought a lot of important and eye-opening comments to that event. And so we want to just thank those high school students and the student reps that were there. Lauren was there, and in particular, Indy, who led that panel. And it was an amazing showing of us, what student voice and advocacy is about. And so I just want to thank them for that. I'd also like to take an opportunity, maybe just for a moment, for everybody in the room. I don't want to just check the box that we had that event happen without maybe debriefing a little and just asking if anybody has any thoughts or input, feedback on what their takeaways were at that student voice event. I guess for me, one of the things was, there was a mix of opinions, I guess, and feelings in the district of, we wish we could have more support over here, but on the other hand, students bear some level of responsibility and, rolling up their sleeves as well. And so, it's such a cordial exchange of, well, here's some ideas and here's some of my thoughts, but everybody shares in that responsibility. And so that was one of the things that I took away. Others?
I thought that the relation to like workload and outside like extracurricular activities and how it can kind of pile on sometimes was very valid, but I also agree with you in the fact that students do have a portion of responsibility, and this is their time to learn how to balance all of those things, because this is the time that they're being prepared for college and life after high school. So I do think that information kind of just like gave another perspective, I guess, from the student perspective on how it is a lot to handle. So that's something to understand while also considering that it's part of the responsibility. I also think that it's important to recognize that the incidents that were talked about don't represent Selah School District as a whole, as has been communicated like to me from other like people from other school districts. And I think that it's important to note that what was problematic was not the student section in that incident. I think that it was more related to a behavioral thing. So I just want to say that I'm grateful for the actions that were taken, but I also think that it's good that we're now moving forward in an appropriate way. And I was at the volleyball game last night, and there was lots of positive energy, and it was a good environment coming from the student section. So I just wanted to take a minute to appreciate that.
Good to hear. Thank you, Lauren.
Jeff, I'll just add that, wow, what you had said about the students being really brave, and they just kind of laid it all out there. I don't feel like anybody was really holding back, but I also want to say publicly that I appreciate the adults in the room for keeping our mouths shut and letting them speak. I think that was really important for everybody to do. You know, there was no interruption. There was no trying to defend things. We just let them speak. And I was really happy that that was how the whole event went.
Great point. Well, student voice and student advocacy is certainly a focus of ours in the district. Now, I think it kind of always has been, but not to the level that it is now. And we value that, and we'll continue to grow in that area and ask for student voice and thoughts there, because after all, they're our constituency. They're why we're here. They're the reason that we show up every day. They're what we're all about. And so why wouldn't we want to know what's on their mind? And so I think it's just more important than ever, maybe, that we continue to grow in that area and allow that to happen, and relish the opportunity to hear from our student population. Other thoughts or comments?
I would just say I wish that we had the ability, and hopefully we will with the panel coming up, to expose our community about what our students are saying and how they said it. They were very articulate in the way that they shared their thoughts and feelings about their experiences. The language they used was so impressive. So I think it would give a lot of people a better sense of the students that are graduating from our high school and what they represent and what they believe in. So very, very refreshing and reassuring, the good work that's going on at the same time.
And there is another student panel on tap coming up as a community collaboration event, correct? When is that?
That is November 15th. It's a Wednesday. It's part of our series of monthly community collaborations. We'll have another panel of students set up, students moderating, questions more directed at the experience, some which we did talk about and have in that panel, but about student experiences as they navigate their way through high school and other things involving in their life. So
Okay, so November 15th is at
5:30 to be right here.
in the boardroom.
Yep.
Here. Okay, so anybody online or listening to the recording, if you listen in time, on November 15th, 5:30, there'll be another student panel opportunity for anybody in the community that would like to come listen. Okay, good, excellent. Number 3 is suggestions or comments from the audience, and we have no one else in the room, so we'll move past that one. Number 4 is our meeting minutes from our September 28th, October 10th, and October 12th meetings. We've had an opportunity to review those minutes, and so we need to approve those. So anybody would like to make a motion?
I move that we approve the minutes from the previous meeting.
And any other comments or questions? We'll vote. All those in favor indicate with an aye.
Aye.
Okay. Passed. We move on now. Number 5 is our consent agenda. Number of things on there as normal or usual. Our HR action sheet is pretty standard operating procedure for this month, I think, so we'll move past that. We do have supplemental contracts. You had a chance to look at those. Those are all of the additional responsibilities that staff sign up for or are involved in outside of beyond their contract day. And so these are supplemental contracts. There's a list in our packet that we were able to see. And so this is an annual thing that we get every year. And so we just need to make sure that that gets approved inside the consent agenda. Payroll goods and services. I didn't see anything outstanding there that needs to be pointed out. All right. And then we have our cancellation of outstanding warrants. This one always makes me chuckle a little bit because there's checks that we write to people and then they don't cash them, but it's probably part of any organization writing a lot of checks. And then the next item in our consent agenda are some policy updates, and there's a series of first readings here, and I'll turn it over to Kevin to explain a little bit about this group of policies and the focus that maybe we want to take a peek at. Kevin?
I warned you
Yeah.
repeatedly that you would be getting a lot of these, and so I haven't let you down there. What I did want to share, which is different this month though, is you have in front of you a packet of information. And that is a summary of the policies that are in first reading for October of 2023. The first 4 listed there are new. The remainder of them, I don't know the exact number, but the remainder of them are revisions to current policy and are in some cases very, very little change of wording in some cases. I'm not going to call a lot of attention to those. What I've included in those are some descriptions of what the changes are based on WASDA. You can read through those if you choose to. My purpose is because there were so many that you were taking at one time, you needed probably some type of documentation to help you navigate through those instead of going back and forth and back and forth. This summarizes those changes. It's also important of 2 of the new policies are new to our school district, but really they're new to WASDA as well. And those are policy 5161, civility in the workplace, and policy 5254, staff expression. So with those, I've given you additional information in your packets. I would highly encourage you to review these and take the time to read through the policies themselves, the procedure in one case, and then the additional documentation that's provided as part of WASDA's policy and legal news. And so these are the attachments that come with that. I have high recommendations for these, as well as the cabinet, that these do become part of our practice here within the school district. We preach these things. We believe in these things. These are also protective measures as well for the district. They can be great communication tools with regards to responsibilities that our staff have, but they are also can be looked at as very different because they have not been ones that we've had in place before. So I give those to you and encourage you to take some time to read through the policies and procedures themselves to get an idea of what will be in if you decide to adopt, as well as a little bit of background from WASDA's perspective of why they are doing, why they have pushed these forward. These are not required by any means. There's no RCWs to follow, no federal mandates to follow. Basically, WASDA is saying these are best practices that they believe can assist school districts as they navigate through some of the incidents that you will see when you read that information. So 2-part, lots of them this month. Many of them are very small revisions, but need your approval or adoption at some point in time because they do change. And then 2 of the 4 that we're providing tonight are ones that need a deeper look and some study before you get to the next meeting where if you choose to adopt, you know what you're adopting.
Okay, so what I heard you say was that they're discretionary. They're not required. However, you wouldn't have brought these to us unless you feel that they're important for us to consider.
Absolutely. And not only me, but the remainder of our cabinet have already had these in front of us and had some discussion with regards to them. And we as a cabinet do feel this is in the best interest of the district to bring these to you for your consideration. And then just with my colleagues as superintendents around the state, my relationship with WASDA, these are ones I think would be of benefit to us to consider.
Good. So our homework between now and next month then would be to pay particular attention to these 4 and understand that the first 2 are new to WASDA as well as the district, and the other 2 are just new to Selah, but they're not new policies in other districts. But we are considering adoption of those other 2. There's 13, by the way, sir.
Sorry.
In case you want
I knew there was double digits, but I didn't know there was 13.
I just thought you'd want to know that.
Yeah. Please don't think that just because there's 13 this time that you're going to potentially see less. There's lots more that are coming to you. And I'm going to try to get us caught up before the legislative session starts again in January. And by the time they get out, you're going to have more. So we want to try to get caught up a little bit.
If you bump past 15, we're going to need refreshments at the meeting.
Yes, I understand. I support as well.
Anybody have any initial thoughts about what we got here? All right. May I ask just one thing about, it's not one of the 4, it's actually one of the other revisions, but 6220 is the bid or request for proposal. Is there any language or any considerations for recognizing local businesses that may want to bid on various projects or opportunities with the district? You know, we talk about, women, male-owned businesses and minority and so forth. So,
We've never had that in policy, but we always encourage local business to put their hat in the ring for different projects. And fortunately, we have had some local, maybe not in Selah, but in the Yakima area that have put in, but we still have to follow the bid requirements, whether they're a local company or an outside company.
Sure. Just like to make sure our local businesses have opportunities,
Yep.
like anyone else. Okay, thank you. Okay, there's our assignment. Any others? There? Okay, thank you for printing those off, Kevin. That helps us a lot. And then getting back to my agenda here. Then there's the next item in the consent agenda are some second readings. There were 4 there that we had a chance to visit about. 5 actually, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 from last month. So this is the second reading, which would mean that we would adopt these unless there are reasons not to, or there's questions about any of these other second readings. So I'll stop there and ask. Anybody has anything? Okay, and then the last thing in the consent agenda are some overnight travel requests. Kevin filled me in a little bit about this. They're all CTE related and they all include students. We know that we're holding the line and limiting and a little bit travel for staff trips and opportunities, but when it comes to including students and as part of their school experience, then that gets our attention more. And so these are all CTE related, all including students. I think a total count was 32 if I got my math right. So we're involving 32 students. And quite a little variety of things that are going on there, from FCCLA to DECA to Honors Band. There's 5 travel requests. Any questions about those? Okay, that's the end of our consent agenda. We need to pass them all with one motion.
I move that we approve the consent agenda.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. Any other questions or comments? Otherwise, we'll vote. All those in favor indicate with an eye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, consent agenda passes. Move on to number 6, which is administration. We are very happy and fortunate to have Miss Betty Lopez, our Executive Director for Special Services, with us tonight with a report on special services and nursing. So welcome, Betty. The floor is yours.
So I have some slides just to highlight some things. So I am just giving some highlights and updates on nursing as well as special education services. And I know you guys get questions about, well, what does this mean? How are kids getting their service? What does that look like? So I wanted to speak to what our current model is, so that you have some of that understanding of where we're putting it in, because we are trying to be more inclusive. And so when we do that, it sometimes gets a little bit muddy for people to understand where things happen. And the other thing is I wanted to highlight some of our specialized programs, because we've got really cool things going on in special ed, and that always gets the attention with small populations. So for nursing, this year is the first year that we have 4 nurses in the district. That in the last 2 years, we've made a jump from 2 nurses to 4 nurses. And so I wanted to explain what numbers have been driving that. Each year we do an assessment of the total number of students and the types of health plans that are required for different medical conditions. And there are simple health conditions where we just need to know about them. They're not complicated, but there's information school receives. And then there are 2 other categories that go up from there. The first being medically complex, which is there's some sort of regular treatment, but it's controlled and has it's predictable in its presentation. And then there's medically fragile, which is requires some sort of ongoing treatment or assessment from the nurse on a more regular basis. So the difference would be like students with diabetes, if they can self-manage their diabetes, they would be considered medically complex, because it's a complex condition. It may have some moments where it needs support, but for the most part, the student knows what they're doing and how to take care of it. The medically fragile student with diabetes would be one who needs total adult assistance to manage their care, either because they're too young to do the care themselves or because of other things. And so we have seen a huge increase in both of those populations in the last years. So these 2 graphs show the difference between 2015 to 2023. You can see our medically fragile, or those kids that need some sort of ongoing nursing assessment, either daily or multiple times a day, has gone up almost 50%. So we have had a need for more nursing, and we have kind of been slow to increase that. So I know it's been, it probably on paper looks like big jumps in terms of the staffing related to that, but I wanted you to see the numbers that kind of happen. And we've got some very interesting cases of students with very rare medical conditions that their doctors don't. So, you know, those are ever evolving and some different supports. So it's just a lot of kids with complex needs. Any questions about nursing?
Model with regards to our nursing support at the buildings when we had less amount of nurses compared to the model that we use this year?
Thank you. So this year, each one of the nurses, they're dedicated to a building or 2 buildings. So Shaney is our one nurse that goes between 2 buildings. So they are housed primarily at 1 building this year, whereas in years past, they had been centrally located, and then they had schedules out at different buildings based off of which students needed which level of support. And for some of our families who have students who are medically fragile, that was very disconcerting because there wasn't a building-based nurse that was one continuous person. So we opted to do this model this year to help give that continuity service at each building. So we do have a registered nurse at each one of our elementary sites, and then our middle and high school share a nurse. And Shaney's primarily at the middle school because that has a higher need right now. All of the buildings have a health aide as well, so there is kind of a double up of support so that kids can get their needs met. But health aides aren't registered nurses, and so there's a limitation of what sort of assessment they can do to triage.
Well, if I recall, we only had one nurse, or maybe, was it one?
Yeah, I
And
can't remember what year it became two, but from 2015 to 2022, we only had two. And it was managed because Shani and Sharon are go-getters, but it was, and we just had an increase in just complex needs
Sure.
students. And so one in particular who, well, several actually, that kind of their situation isn't stable at all. So even though we have a prescribed course of treatment, there's kind of a lot of assessments that happen during the day that use kind of emergency procedures that we have orders for regularly. So
I see we have increased staffing levels. Do the new buildings have increased facilities for this issue?
no, so we are making do with, just wherever we can fit our nurses. And so we luckily have dedicated office space at the middle school, Lints and SIS that we can use. JCP is a shared space and the high school is a shared space for the but it tends to, I think it works out because there is a kind of optional auxiliary spaces that they can use for their confidential conversations that they need to have.
And so the funding for four nurses, this, if I remember right, the state formula, because of the demographics and number of students and all of that, funds a certain number of FTE nurses, which isn't four. And so the remainder that we're backfilling is part of our levy, I believe, if I remember right. Is that right?
Yeah, and special ed. So each one of the nurses is quoted partially out of special ed. Several kids on.
So it's one of those needed areas and a good example of what the local levy goes towards. Yeah. Well, I'll just say on a personal level, I appreciate the dedication of having a nurse and a familiar face and a familiar name in each building. I have a grandson who's diabetic, and he's in 7th grade now, and so he self-manages at this point. But through his elementary years or earlier years, he was so dependent, and we were, and his mother was so dependent on that contact in the school. So to have somebody dedicated to that is really key to those families.
Definitely. And it's scary, right? We want them to know that their children are taken care of, and just, it doesn't feel good to see, yeah, the nurse is on their way, right? So yeah, we're excited. The other things that I wanted to talk to you about is our students with disabilities. And so these two graphs are two different ways to look at the proportion of students who have disabilities and what kind of program type they are supported with. So the light blue is students on 504s, and the dark blue is our students in supported learners. Those are our two kinds of people. So if you think of it as 504s are students who only need accommodations, and supported learning students are on IEPs and have modified. The orange and yellow are the in-between. They have some sort of IEP service, and so you can see that as the kids get older, the proportion of students who have 504s go up, and that's a good thing because that means that we have taught them the skills that they need, and they can kind of graduate, so to speak, to this needing accommodations. And the part that we're working on with our inclusionary practices is that orange bit. So the students who have multiple areas of service, as we get more information about them as they move through our system, and we can kind of target what areas they need support in, how do we not let that prevent their access to their peer? And so as they move into middle and high school, we know more about them, we know where their needs are, but we still need them to get that not at the expense of their general education. So that gets tricky as we move up. So I'll talk a little bit about our services, but it's kind of two different ways for you to visualize that data. So our actual number of students is smaller at preschool than at kinder, and then as get older, we identify more students. Mhm. Yeah, so our academic, special design instruction for elementary and middle school is really embedded through our MTSS process. So I know I've showed you guys our wellness, and we've talked about that before, but really all students are at some place in their learning of either being below standard or above standard, and it just depends on what. So we know for our students with IEPs, we've identified that they're at that tier 3 level of being behind in some way in those academic areas. And so we use our universal intervention times, either go times, walk to, or what do you mean? Yeah. Yeah, that's everybody's going somewhere to support, and so we're embedding in that special design instruction in those experiences. So it's not taking them out of another course to get that support. Some of our students have additional pieces to their IEPs that are above and beyond those common intervention plans, but we're really trying to keep it to those intervention plans that they're not missing out on the other parts and pieces of their learning, especially because kids learn the best from their peers, right? We create the situation that they're learning from their peers. So we're trying to use that push-in and co-taught experience to really help them in the larger group settings, and then those common intervention plans to be able to really target the skills that are on their IEPs to get them caught up. The high school doesn't have a common intervention plan because it's high school and it's credit dependent. So the way services are delivered there are primarily through the co-taught experiences, and then we have some replacement courses for students that really need a focused amount of time on those skills. But it's not a very large percentage of students. Most of our kids are getting those co-taught. So this is the one that gets tricky for families because they're like, what do you mean they're getting their where's their special ed? They're supposed to have special ed. Well, it's in go time. Well, everyone has go time. So what are they getting? So that's why I kind of wanted to let you know that it is specialized. It's documented on the IEP, but it's within a common structure of the school. So that's what
In the same classroom.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, so 9 to 9:30, everybody goes to their groups for reading. Yeah. And my group just happens to be a special ed group because I need to do X, Y, Z, right? But Alicia's going and she's in high tech, right? So yeah, so it normalizes that we all need something and we all need different things, and we go and get that and then we come back together. So it's kind of a cool thing that's really working, and that each building has gotten really good at doing that analysis of when they do their tier 2 staffing meetings, they're moving kids into groups as they grow, and the conversations have really shifted from like, oh, I'm not sure if I can move that student to, yep, they're ready, let's try this, and figuring out how to help them generalize their skills so that they're not needing special ed as much.
So there's data and results that are positive that support the model.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it hasn't shown up yet in our like aggregate data, which I know we're going to go over. But I do see it in the culture around supporting students and the willingness to think about individual areas versus the whole picture. I think there used to be kind of this common thinking that if the student's on an IEP, then we kind of lower the bar, and now we're not having that conversation in that way. It's this is where they're struggling with what we're willing to do as well. Oh, go ahead. So we do a similar thing with social emotional support as well. So our pride rooms are a big part of supporting students who have social emotional SDI. So this is another one where sometimes families are like, okay, so they do check in, check out. Like, what do you teach? Well, we do a lot of teaching that piece. And so again, trying to think of how our specialized supports are connected to a general ed structure so that we can fade off of supports as they're no longer. And so there is direct instruction through our SEL time that might be specialized for specific academic groups. But we're also building at the elementary and middle school a common response system so that that coaching that needs to happen in the moment is the same of whether you just had a bad day because you're a team or if it's part of your ongoing support. And then the high school is also building it out. It just looks a little bit different. This is for us here. Then we do have specialized programming for our students who are the most complex learners, and it's called supported learning, so it would be our one self-contained option. They use a lot of different tools that are very specific, so I wanted to highlight some of them for you. And if you ever want to go see the classrooms, we have some very talented teachers that do great things with kids, and it looks very different, and you might think that, how is this academic? But they are really helping kids grow and move in their independence and whatever that looks like. And they're also connecting themselves to those common intervention times of school-wide supports. It just looks a little different. So our token boards and our first ends and our schedules are all ways that we are helping students know how to navigate their day. And so, yeah, if you ever want to see a classroom, let me know. See some of that. STEP is one of those areas. So super proud about our kids getting out and being independent in different work environments. Our coaches have really helped, so our paraeducator coaches are out there helping kids really be independent in some of these different job tasks. So you might see them around the community, Burger Ranch, the food bank, a couple of other places are really out there doing regular work. And we're trying to connect them to be gainfully employed once they leave us. And so we're getting a few, and some of them it's the pickups with the adult systems, trying to do that warm handoff, but keep trying with that. So one of the things we're doing with that is also doing a series of parent and student workshops to help families start planning for life after high school, well, like after 21. And so how do families start planning for their students who have complex needs? What does that look like? What kinds of agencies do I need to start communicating with at what time? How do I see my child as an adult and work ready? Because that's also something that's not always something that families can see, especially when students have complex disabilities. So we had one last night. We had a few more parents attend than our previous one, but they're monthly and ongoing. So if you see those come out and you have any families with students with disabilities, these are good topics for them to just kind of start thinking about those parts of adult life.
Are those, I'm sorry, are those for high school aged families, or is this K through 12 that would go to these?
So middle high school is the focus, but really if a family wanted to come with a younger one, the better. We'll welcome them because it's a hard thing for families to think about their child at like 7, 8 as a 20-year-old, right? And when you're, especially if you have a disability that's limiting you in multiple areas, it isn't always like, what do you mean they're going to be? Of course they're going to work. They're going to be an adult, right? So we got to figure out like, what does that mean? Where are they going to need to be living? How are they going to be having leisure experiences? So yeah, we'd encourage.
I imagine that would be on their minds from an early age, I would think, because they would be thinking about what's the future going to look like. How do they access that calendar, or how do they get onto the mailing list for that? Parent Square.
Out again the week before each of the next ones.
And that's a whole district notification. Okay, great. Thank you.
And then we happen to have several students with visual impairments. So I don't know if you had seen the notice about White Green Day. It's the second week of October. We host a gathering of students to come who all have visual impairments, and they all do this together. So Brittany Valikoff, our teacher of the visually impaired, has really opened up Selah as a place to gather for the Washington School for the Blind activities, and this is one of them. And so we get to showcase our facilities and spaces and students to other students from the region. And so they have a big gathering here. So it's really cool. So It's the beginning of October. I should have sent out something to you guys specifically for that, but look for it next year because it's a fun activity to see how. So they do sports and different games with each other using all their adaptive equipment, which you know you don't think about certain things when you have sight, and just like the idea of like playing soccer and what you might need with an adaptive equipment to know where the ball is in space, right? And so you've got sounds and things like that. So it's good to kind of see those things so you can kind of have what sort of adaptive equipment. So
How many visually impaired students are in the district?
and then Octavio, who's in that front picture down at the bottom by the yellow sign, he's taking a break from us and he's at the school for the blind this year, but he's probably coming back next year. And he's very tenacious and knows how to get himself places. And sometimes it gets us a little bit stiff. It's not what we thought he was ready for, but that's what he's doing. So,
For him.
that's all I have.
Obviously, there's a lot of one-on-one, a lot of care, a lot of thinking, a lot of doing what's right for individuals as an individual. And sounds like you've got some really good people that are working and are nurturing our special needs students and making sure that they get the best possible experience that they can here in Selah. Yeah, thank you for your work. Yeah, very much. Okay, we are moving now to, item C, a November board meeting. Are we gonna have a board meeting in November? Oh, okay. Well, tell us about it. Correct.
Not partaking of our
And I think I reached out to everybody individually about whether that would work for you, and the consensus was that that seemed to be okay. So I guess it'd be another chance to throw that out to everybody before we take a vote on the move. That we wouldn't have, I think it was the 9th, if I remember right, before, and now we would move it to the 16th. It would be the only meeting in the month of November because Thanksgiving is a couple weeks later or a week later. And because we're not going to the WASDA conference. And by the way, the reminder for the reason for not going to WASDA was because that would be an expensive outing for the board. And in light of our budget focus this year, we didn't feel that that was the right thing to do. So we canceled our plans to do that. But now we have this move in front of us for November 16th. Any additional thoughts on it?
That's a business meeting, not a study session, right? So it'd be at 4:30.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we do need to take action to officially adopt, revise our calendar. So I'll move that we officially move our November meeting to November 16th. So any other last thoughts? We'll vote. Okay, all those in favor indicate with an aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, we'll move that meeting to the 16th. Good, thank you. And now we are at the point of hearing from our student board representatives. And Indy, we're glad to see that you were able to get here. Thank you, welcome. And Lauren's here, so the floor would be yours.
Okay, well, hi, it's nice to see you all. I hope you're doing well. As for updates, I don't have much, but I did just want to say that Natalie Keller, our previous board member, was back in town last weekend, so we got to meet up and chat. And I just wanted to let you know she's doing well at Gonzaga, and she's doing a lot of journalism classes right now, and she's writing for the Gonzaga Bulletin, their newspaper on campus. So it seems like she's having a lot of fun adventures with that. So yeah.
Um, kind of to branch off of that, the Selah FFA horse team is headed to nationals in Indianapolis on Sunday. So just kind of wish them luck. They won state last year, so they're able to go to nationals this year. So that's pretty cool.
Well, Indy, before you got here, we had a moment earlier in the meeting where we recognized and acknowledged and highlighted the student panel at the high school. And I think it's important to bring that back since you weren't here, and thank you for facilitating that and getting, leading that student panel. It was incredibly valuable, and so thank you for your leadership there. And we definitely want more student voice, and so just wanted to shout out to you. Thank you very much for your leadership there.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys asking me to be there, and I think that was a really powerful experience for me too. And to be in a room and to hear that, and just yeah, thank you for the opportunity. Every day I learn new things on the board, and I'm so thankful. So thank you.
All right, thank you. Okay, we're going to move on now to our Executive Director of Student Learning, Ms. Alicia Jacob, is with us tonight. Hi, Alicia.
Hi, thank you for letting me give you guys updates on things. I know it's been a couple sessions since I've been here. So there's a few things I just want to go over a little bit. I'm going to piggyback on Betty's presentation that she spoke to, and going back to that rhombus where it was the greens, and when she was talking about that's our MTSS system, and we realize that kids, no matter the content that they're working on, they could be anywhere in that rhombus at any time. And part of that is how we do, she spoke specifically to our special education and our students that are on a 504, but that's also how we serve our high cap students. We look at it for our migrant and our multilingual learners. So we look at that model really for all of our students and how we can support them. But I wanted to give you some percentages of just the number of students we have in our different programs. So in our SPED program, our K-12 program specifically, we have 12% of our population is in SPED. So when she was talking about it's a small population, it's very similar to some of our other programs. And just in preschool, we have 39 students. So and those are students that looks a little different when they're in preschool, because it's almost more of a family plan than it is an individual student, but it's supporting them and trying to get to ensure that hopefully the goal would be as they enter our system, they may not need those supports and could be able to function, but sometimes they need to continue in the system. From our 504, our students that are on a 504, which she showed you that a lot of those students are predominantly in our intermediate and then more so in our secondary, we have 3% of our population. So it's even a smaller group of students. Some of the other ones we have is high cap, which I know that the presentation was last month on that one. We're right around 7% of our students are in that program. With our migrant program, we're at around 5%. Our multilingual learners, we have 12% of our population is there, but we have 18% of our population in dual because we have students that are both multilingual and they're English only coming into the program as we go. So we have quite a few programs that are specialized. Some of them, like with dual, it's an actual, thinking of our K-8, they have classes that they're actually learning in Spanish, and then we have some that are in English for them. But when we look at our migrant, our multilingual learners that are not part of dual, our SPED and our 504 students, those ones we really look at how can they be with their peers and how do they get that interaction, whether it's extensions or filling some gaps. And so we put a lot of that information or a lot of that supports in their core, which is what we talk about kind of thinking homeroom or when they're getting with their other classes. Then we also do that through that intervention time. We call it intervention and extension. So no matter what students need, they're going to something. It could be they're getting extensions, which would be our high cap students or just students in the general population that have exceeded and are needed to go beyond, or they can get their interventions if they need those or supports in the gaps. So just to kind of give you an understanding of just the number of students we have in those programs, and that's about similar numbers. Dual, those have increased just because we've been building the program up, so that's been increasing. But for the other ones, we're right around, you might be a percent or two variance, but that's our typical number. Something else that I'm excited to be able to have some of our teachers participate in is through the state, we have a requirement as we adopt social studies or by 2024, and for us, we haven't done a social studies adoption, so it's by 2024, we have to adopt and embed the Sense Time and Memorial curriculum, which is from the state. It was built with the 29 recognized tribes across us, so it's an indigenous curriculum that we look at. Back in 2011, they redid the legislation and said that you need to work with the closest tribe that you have and specifically find out from them where would they like different parts of their historical as well as current structures to be embedded into the educational system. So for us, that's the Confederated Tribes of the Yakama Nation. For them, there's lots of school districts, right? So having everybody come and ask the same thing has been difficult for them. So we were fortunate that the ESD is putting on a training. We'll have it at Heritage on November 7th, but they invited all of the regional school districts to attend. There'll be elders from the Yakama Nation will be there, as well as it's being led through the Department of Indigenous Education from OSPI. So we'll be there to give us insight into what is STI, we call it STI, what does it look like? And then the tribe can have some insight and input for us there, so they don't have to meet with each of us individually. So super excited. We have a representative from every grade level that'll be attending, so that they'll be the lead for their grade level to take them back to their schools. And the goal will be by the end of the year, we'll have those embedded, so it'll be implementation for next year. And that's also part of the state school board requirement that we have that in place. So excited that we were able to get that, because it's been hard for the tribe just because everybody's asking them for the same thing and they're keep repeating themselves. So this will be good that we can all be together. And we do have some school districts in the region that are further ahead. The Mount Adams School District, the Wapato School District, and the Toppenish, which are on the reservation, are much further along. So they have resources that we can use. So it's nice that there's already things in place. There's videos, there's curriculum that we'll be able to start to embed in our students, be able to understand the history of the Yakama Nation, which is our local.
So this is in response to a legislative action, and so we're complying with that, and then we have this opportunity now. And the objective of that gathering at Heritage will be to be sure that we're representing the history of the Yakama Nation correctly and properly in our history instruction.
Correct, and it's not only history, it's current and future. So they want to look at it because a lot of times when we think of indigenous people, it's always in a past context. It's not in currently what's going on. So that's where they get the opportunity to give us resources about currently what's going on. What's the structure of their government? Because they have a different structure because they're considered a sovereign nation within our state. So what does their governmental structure look like and how do they run it? So it's not only the historical pieces that they'll be able to give us, but they'll also be able to tell us like what are things that they're currently doing, what does its structure look like now, and then future things that they have. So the goal I'm hoping is that we can start to build some ongoing connections with them that we could use and have tribal members be coming into our schools and present what's going on and how they're, how are they managing the resources on the reservation and learning more about it. I'm excited. Should be a great day, and we have a good turnout. There was a lot of interest from our teachers to be. I've actually had teachers the last couple of years asking, when are we going to do this? And so this is a great opportunity, not only for our teachers, but for our students as well. And the last thing that I just wanted to give you guys a heads up on is one of the things that we've done it on and off, I think, prior to even me being in this position, but we're going to be doing a climate survey. We're going to be doing it with students, staff, and with community members. We'll be sending it out. And the idea with this one is there's going to be what we call parallel items. So we'll ask questions. It'll be asked specifically to each of those three stakeholder groups, but they'll be parallel. So it'll be the same question so we can get all three stakeholders' point of view. So an example would be is from a student perspective, it could be that if I have problems in my class, I feel comfortable talking to teachers about it. From a teacher perspective, it could be that students feel comfortable talking to teachers if they have problems in the class, and parents could say, my child feels comfortable talking to teachers if they have problems in the class. So we'll have a parallel opportunity to see, is there discrepancy between any of the stakeholder groups, or is there consistency, which can help us kind of narrow in where is there areas that we may need to work on in terms of the climate of our buildings. So we'll be looking at relationships, we'll be looking at a sense of belonging, and we'll be safety, and then also harassment, intimidation, and bullying. So those will be the 4 key areas for all 3 groups. There'll be a few items that are different and unique just because of that group, but the majority of the items will be parallel, which will be nice because then that's the first time we'll have parallel items that we can really see. Do our students see the same thing as staff, as parents and families?
Alicia, is there anything that prompted the interest in a climate survey? Is it something brought that to our attention to where we felt like that was needed, or is it one of those that we should just do on a kind of an ongoing basis?
Yeah, it's a good practice because you should always be taking points of time just to make sure that what we see as administration is what actually is what other people are feeling and getting an understanding of. It also, you typically, when you have buildings going into school improvement, it'll be one of the things that they suggest too, is that you're doing stakeholder surveys and finding out. So a climate's typically the type of survey they would do. And like I said, we have done them. We didn't do them last year. We did them the year before. And I'm sure in previous years they've done surveys. I mean, I'm sure we had done them.
Right.
But I just think it's good practice. I also believe there is a legislative requirement that we do a survey that goes out. So there is some legislative requirements too, but it is good practice. I mean, we should be asking our constituents, do you feel a sense of belonging? Do you believe that there are good relationships in our school districts? Do you feel that there's safety? So it's good practice as well.
And Alicia, when will that be sent out?
Our goal is to have it in November. Right now, we're just making sure all the items are parallel. We had hoped for conference week and we just weren't able to get all the items.
And will the board get to hear a follow-up on that, or what some of the results of that would be?
Yeah, so it'll be done electronically, so we should be able to bring it to the December board meeting. And the other goal that we had talked about is that we would go ahead and we would state what the items are going to be to the public, so they would know what items are going to be asked. So it's not, we're being very transparent of what the items are going to be for all 3 groups. So we'll post those when we send out the survey. We'll also post the items so people know what's being asked. Any questions on any of those 3? That was a lot.
That was a lot. All good stuff.
I can
though.
tell you more, but I hope.
All good stuff.
All right. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. I'd just like to publicly thank you for the follow-up letter on your RTM trip. I think that, oftentimes we know people are going to conferences or whatever, and, we don't hear a lot beyond that. So I appreciate the time that you spent to send us a follow-up. That's very valuable. Good. Thank you. Now we'll move to Ms. Scacco. I don't see Stephanie tonight, so it'll be the Chris
right.
show.
Yep.
And, our Associate Superintendent of District Operations.
Shouldn't be too long of a report. First, I will go over the enrollment report for October, which is really pretty close to the September report. We saw an increase of 4 FTE from September to October. So we're sitting on average at 3657, which is just under 10 FTE over projection. We like to be a little bit higher than that at this point of the year, but this is where we're at, and we're hoping we see the kids retain them for the rest of the year. So any questions on the enrollment? We continue to be open district-wide for out-of-district students to apply and be considered.
I know of particular interest when I looked at this. It looks like the last year's kindergarten class, now first graders, is continuing to show a little shy of what we maybe anticipated. Does that seem to fit what you're thinking?
Yeah, the kinder and TK right now are running right on their 1 over projection. But yeah, looking at first grade, 251 in October. So we're down 17 to projection for first grade.
That's a carryover. That's from our kind of a uncertain group as kindergarten a year ago.
Yes.
So it continues to kind of flow through.
All right. I also wanted to just give you a quick verbal update of the year-end closing. So we are officially closed for 22-23 financially. So we've closed the books. We've submitted our report. It was actually due yesterday. We submitted it last Friday. We've received our review comments, and we've fixed a couple little tweaks we needed to fix. So we are, at a good place with that. I'll be putting together presentation materials here in a couple weeks, and then we'll come back as we always do in December and present that year-end report. We will also bring the September and October financial status reports for the board. We won't have the November one done because we don't get the county treasurer's report until the 10th of the following month. So we'll bring November and December's reports to the January meeting, since January's business meeting is later in the month. So you'll get September and October in the December report, and you'll get November and December in the January. And then we'll be all caught up, and you'll get one every month through the rest of the year. So
You're starting to pile on like these policies.
I know this is what we do every year. We have to. Okay, so final revenues for 22-23, 60.4 million, expenditures 59.9. And we also had a transfer into cap projects of 400,000. So we actually had budgeted a deficit budget in the 22-23 year of 1.1 million. We actually increased by 127, almost 128,000 in our cash reserve. But remember, we ran 94 FTE over projection last year, so we made close to $1 million on our enrollment. So that really bailed us out. That was the main component of bailing us out on that, so we didn't see a deficit end result there. We saw an actual increase of 127,000 to the cash reserve.
So we didn't need to use reserves like we
didn't.
thought we may have
No.
needed to.
So just publicly about the cash reserve, I talked to my fiscal colleagues around the area, and I really feel fortunate. This district, so many people involved in budget management and oversight, and the board ultimately making good financial decisions on a variety of things. I feel really fortunate that we are sitting at $11.1 million in our cash reserve, which is about 18% of our expenditures. As you know, you require as a board to have 8% at a minimum fund balance at any given time. Of course, reserves are on top of that. So of our 11.1 million in the cash reserve, about 9 million of that is unreserved. So that's about 16.5% or so. So the good thing about this is, as we go through our process this year with budget analysis and putting together a budget reduction plan for the following year, we're going to be looking at the next 3 years as we do that, because we're in a position financially that we can use the fund balance, spend it down just slightly over the next, stagger it down a little bit over the next 3 years to help soften the blow on any given year. So not all districts are in that position. A lot of districts are at their minimum fund balance right now, and they can't use their fund balance. They need to maintain it. So I feel good here in Selah that we're in this position. It's a lot more palatable for people. So we are actually going to be looking at, in particular, putting together a budget reduction plan for 24-25, but we're also looking a couple years beyond to say, okay, maybe stagger our cuts over 3 years to make an impact over 3 years, but we don't have to make a huge reduction in any one year. So this 11.1 million will help us with that. So we ended the year, our salary and benefit costs 84% of total expenditures. So we're right on the normal average, 82 to 84% in any given year. So just think about that. In a $63 million budget, that's 50 million in salaries and benefits. So it is the majority, 84%. So that's one thing I also wanted to note our collection of our taxes between the bonds and levies. We're collecting at 98%. We collected at 98% in 22-23. There's always the exemptions and different things that happen that we collect on later to some degree, but we did collect at 98%. ESSER funds, just so you know, we ended 22-23 with a carryover into this current school year of just under 600,000 in our ESSER funds. 23-24 is the last year that we can spend ESSER funds. There are some opportunities for districts if, say, we encumbered part of that money and we didn't receive an item that we ordered until later. They're allowing some extensions to spend the money for that. We don't plan on making any major purchases out of ESSER funds, but so we are planning, we've talked a lot about the use of those funds this year, so we will have ours fully expended by the end of the year. And
Could I stop you there? Do you know the number, what was our grand total for all the ESSER fund phases that we received? Do you have
for ESSER in particular, just under 9 million.
9 million?
Yeah. We had other federal COVID relief funds in different buckets, but that was the majority.
And that 9 million gets added to our overall total of our budget. Then
Yes,
embedded in. part of
exactly.
that.
Yep.
So as we look at a trend line, if you will, and you see a budget pre-COVID, and now you add that 9 million during the COVID years, I mean, it looks like a pretty inflated number, I would think,
Yes,
when that money was provided by the federal government.
right.
And wasn't anything that we went out to seek additional funds. It was just part of the COVID relief package that every school district received.
And those funds go into the calculation for how much money we spend per student in any given year. So, you know, you see that incline in your expenditures, that's going to be part of that total cost per student, which should probably float down unless we get an influx of funds through the legislative process.
So that's a good point. So once we get through the ESSER fund bubble, if you will, then that goes away. And then now that's money's not in the budget total. So when you divide that out with the number of students, that dollars per student spent will be lower. Is that fair?
Yep. Okay, a couple other quick things. Carryovers, we do have carryovers. I'll bring a list of the carryovers in any given program that will be accessed during the 23-24 school year. I'll bring that during the presentation in December. As far as recoveries, there are no recoveries from the state. We're in a good position there. We have taken advantage of the funding opportunities that we've had to best serve our students. So we don't have no recoveries at the state level. And then I wanted to mention on the capital projects fund. So the total year-end fund balance for capital projects is 6.5 million. Of that, 873,000 is still identified as bond money. And then non-bond monies, just under 5.7 million, and 3.7 million of that is the Wilbur Rep donation. So that's reserved in there for the tech center. So that leaves 1.9 million in non-bond funds that are at the end of the 22-23 school year. So we are not done with the transportation cooperative facility, but we're really darn close, and we'll see the final billings coming in here in the next, hopefully 2 to 3 months. We still have approximately $1 million available in state match funds that we can access, but we have to have expenditures that fall within the categories that are available with state match. So we do have definitely construction, testing and inspection. We're pretty much done with that. There's still some money left on the table for that, but we'll be pretty darn close with what's left in the fund in state match money that we'll receive versus expenditures still going out. So we're safe to say we'll have a minimum of $2 million available in non-bond funds. Could be upwards of 2.5, 2.8 million when this project's done. So that's a good thing. Yes.
Yeah, that's the difference between. Right.
Whatever.
Will that potentially influence the amount of money that we normally transfer from our basic fund over to the cap project fund?
Absolutely. At this point in time, we don't anticipate recommending a transfer in 24-25, and we don't have a transfer budgeted this current school year. I think we're going to be fine for right now, and then we can talk longer term as we get our finances in order moving forward.
Good.
Remember that money.
Does incur interest as well. So a good chunk of change in the millions is going to generate some interest over the course of the year, although not a lot, but it's still visible. And any time that you're going to go potentially back out to the voters for future bonds, it's always nice to be able to advertise the district has resources that they've saved in anticipation for a future endeavor. That's very good public relations.
Absolutely.
Chris, what was the total for Wilbur Rep? Is it 3.9,
3.7.
3.7?
Exact at the end of August is 3,727,101. And that earns interest, that amount of money. That's why you see an odd amount there. Yeah. Okay, any other questions on, that was just a snippet. We'll bring back a presentation in the December meeting, but wanted to give you a heads up, update on that the books are officially closed and looks good.
Nice highlights. I appreciate sort of a little synopsis of your bottom line and what you found, and appreciate.
Yeah, no problem.
Got to be a pretty good feeling for your team to be done with that
Yeah,
project.
definitely.
This might be an ignorant question. You can tell me to zip it if it's gonna be a waste of time. But from what I understand, it was always like bonds are for buildings, right? So with our capital projects fund, why aren't all the dollars in that for buildings? I mean, what other capital projects, I guess, would be outside the realm of bonds?
Good question. We actually have been transferring money from our general fund into the cap projects fund for years, up until this year was the first time we haven't transferred money. And that money from the general fund to capital projects were for projects, capital in nature. So like HVAC projects, roofing, paint and new carpet, and different projects like that come up, paint, striping our parking lots, a lot of different things. Those expenses come out of that fund, and those are not bond funds. So anytime we go out and pass a bond with the community to build a school, and it's specific in the resolution that you all adopt, then those are the bond funds, and they get earmarked as bond funds. If you'll remember, we had a public hearing not too long ago about the board entertaining the idea of getting public comment about utilizing leftover state match money from the John Campbell and Kinder projects for this transportation project. So in that resolution that you adopted, it also provides for other safety type improvements if there were any state match monies left at the end of the transportation project. So that's something that we'll have to analyze and take a look at, because there may be some safety things that we need to take care of. So. All right, just one last thing, and I'm not going to go through all the detail. I let you know last board meeting that I would bring back a timeline and kind of a scope of the budget analysis project that we're all going to be going through this next few months. And in this, I've highlighted specific updates for the school board or anything involving the school board, so that you don't have to spend a lot of time with this, but it also gives you information about how things are going to progress with our work. And this is a big project, and I really appreciate the fact that we have our full cabinet that will be right in with sleeves rolled up and working with key stakeholders, whether it be building principals or department heads or what have you. We'll all be representing different components of this review, and we'll come back together periodically throughout the next few months, and we will discuss as a cabinet what we're coming up with, and then make final decisions about putting together this preliminary budget reduction plan for 24-25, while keeping the following 2 years in mind as well. So this timeline just gives you kind of a synopsis of what's going to happen. Obviously, you'll see on this that our target date to have a final budget reduction plan, final draft, if you will. I know you ultimately approved the budget in July, but we want to have that 4-year review in April. So our deadline to ourselves is March 31st to have that completed. So, and we really need to do that for budget season really jumps into gear and kicks into gear in the March timeframe. So I think that'll be good timing for us. And it also will coincide with a lot of the attrition that happens in the district, depending on how many positions might be reduced. And we believe that those can happen through attrition. So along with the other reductions we come up with. So if you have any question, anybody have any questions on this timeline?
No, I'll just say thank you for putting this together. This helps us and for also for taking it to heart and acting on it so quickly to put a master plan together. I think that just probably helps you and your team as well and Kevin and everybody else in cabinet, but it helps us kind of know that, okay, we're on this journey here and here's the time frame for it. So appreciate the work.
Thank you. That's all I have.
All right, thank you very much. Okay, we are now up to our superintendent report. Mr. McKay.
So I like going last with all the different reports, and really I'm just going to do a bunch of shout outs and positive things that have gone on in the district recently and in anticipation of a few other ones. We are Thursday of our conference week. There are conferences happening as we speak right now at all the buildings. I've been to all the buildings during conferences, and obviously it's a great opportunity for parents, and that's what it's there for, to learn about the progress of their children. Lots of different models being used, but I would hope that at the end of it, it's beneficial for the parents. That's what it's designed for. As part of the high school's arena style parent conferences where they bring staff members down to the kind of the commons area, if you haven't been there recently, they've incorporated a community provider fair, which encircles the outside of the conferences. And those are community agencies that come to that because it's a captive audience of parents, and we can provide a lot of support and services to them, and they can learn about a lot of the things that are going on within our community and general community of the Yakima Valley that can support their children as well as support the families as well. So I want a big shout out to the high school staff who have organized that, the community partners who have definitely decided to participate, and then Colton, because it's really been his vision to start that and grow that over the last number of years. Last Thursday, our elementaries, Robert Lynn's, JCP, and SIS all partnered together for a family night, a family academic night, where families from each of those three buildings came to JCP, which is different. We've decided to pool our resources together and bring the families from all three buildings to one, and they'll have turns of rotation through the different buildings during the course of the year. But for the very first one, very well attended by parents and students, so very nice to see as well. We celebrate Veterans Day like most all of us do. Our celebration will be the day of Veterans Day, which happens to fall on a Saturday this year, but we'll celebrate with the non-school day on the Friday. But the celebration by our students and the recognition and support of our veterans will be done throughout the course of that week, and with regards to assemblies and showing our honor of their service. We already mentioned community collaboration with the student panel. That'll happen on the 15th. And the last thing I want to say is that we're coming to the end of October. And October is National School Safety Month, as well as Principal Appreciation. And I have to thank the efforts of a lot of people who took a substantial amount of time and energies to make sure that we did our part in recognizing the importance of school safety. And that was first and foremost our Director of School Safety, which is Joe Coscarart, and the work he's done in a dual role of transportation, but he's managed to put both them together and do a lot of bus safety with a lot of also other safety with regards to our district. He's also now, I've handed off the partnership, which you saw start here with Aubrey Hole-Regner coming to the board. I've handed that off to him, and he and Aubrey are now planning together for a community parent committee who is going to at some point in the time bring to you some recommendations that they feel need to be implemented, or for us to, for you as a board to consider. So I'm happy that Joe has taken that on as well. As Joe in his leadership position has a lot to do with that, but it's really our administrators and the staff that are hired in order to support safety and security and well-being for our schools. And those are our campus engagement staff, administration, and so forth. And they obviously have a huge part of that. And last but not least, we're our partnership with the city of Selah and the SRO that we employ, and there are other officers who come to our assistance when needed, needs to be thanked here in October as we recognize safety and security in our district. So that's it. That's it for my report. A lot of good things happening. I realize that we've had some challenging incidents that we've had to overcome. But I also want to make sure that all of you know, and I know you know, and I think Lauren said it best, that there are a lot of very good things happening in our schools. There are a lot of things that our student body as a whole represent that are extremely positive, as she pointed out. And that sometimes when we get faced with challenges and incidents, that gives the district somewhat of a reputation that we don't want. It's always good to share a lot of positive things, counterbalance that. And our students said it the best. Lauren said that did not represent us as a community and definitely as a high school.
Excellent. Thank you. Appreciate that. Okay, we'll move on to board communications then. Opportunity for any board member to share anything that might be going on in their world that they'd like to share with everybody.
I just have a quick one. I wanted to highlight a parent tonight. The senior class of 2024 has of course, a parent group that's been raising funds and organizing for the senior class party. And we lost our president and our treasurer in short order fairly quickly into the year. And thankfully, Amy Ozanich, the organizer extraordinaire of the Selah Aquatic Center and many other things, stepped in and is filling the role of the president of our organization. And many of us, I know I'm looking at Sarah right now, are very thankful that somebody jumped on that grenade, so to speak, and is taking over that role. And we have a lot of confidence in her and are very thankful for her joining that effort. So thank you, Amy Ozanich, and all the parents on that group as well.
You would be included in that, because I would bet that you and Amy are also very active in that group.
When they said, does anybody want to be president? I did the thing where I looked at my hands. So Amy, somebody caught Amy's eye and she said, all right, I'll do it. So we're very thankful.
Oh, that's good. Good. Okay. Others?
I'd just like to mention that the election coming up is obviously weighing heavily on our board. I appreciate how Jeff and Dan have conducted themselves in the community and on social forums. There are certain things that I've had to type out and then think better of before I push send a couple times. And I know that I'm sure that cuts even deeper for the two of you. So continue to take the high road and come what may.
Thank you, Joe. That means a lot. Appreciate it. Can't speak for Dan, but integrity is number one in my book, and absolutely nothing to hide in terms of our thinking and performance as board members. We feel like we're representing everybody in Selah to the best of our ability and the constituents that voted for us, and we're hopeful it will get to continue serving the students and district here at Selah. Thank you for that. I got a couple of communications. I had the opportunity to attend the Chamber of Commerce Wine, Dine, and Beyond fundraiser, I think was what it was called. It's an annual event there, and it was a wonderful evening. I got to meet people I hadn't met. I got to see some friends that I hadn't seen in a while, and it was really well done. I think it showcased, some of the leaders and businesses in Selah, and a fun time was had by all. But it was a fun time. I will say we were on the edge of a weekend with grandkids all weekend, and at the end of the dinner, there was some leftover desserts. And so, like any good fundraising event, they auction off the leftover desserts, and I bought a chocolate cake for $30. But my grandkids loved every crumb of that cake. It was a good, and my wife appreciated that too, because she didn't have to worry about dessert. So it worked out really well. But anyway, that was a fun event, and I got a chance to visit with some people in the community I don't normally get to do with. So that was fun. I appreciate that. And I sort of passed it up earlier in the meeting today. Back to the student panel, you know, we thank the students, we thanked Indy and the student reps that were there, but I was remiss and I missed the opportunity to thank Colton and Hunter System for the work that they did in preparing for that and making sure that it was handled correctly and properly. And so thank you to Colton and Hunter for that. And with that, that's what I got. Any others? Okay. Okay, all right, yeah. Do we need an executive session at all? Okay, thank you everyone for a great meeting. This meeting is now adjourned. There you go, hour and a half.